Hello again. Today I'm going to be talking about confidence and authenticity, which are things that we should be striving towards cultivating within ourselves. Sorry for that little dog bark. So these are two concepts that are very interwoven. They often bounce off of each other. You know, when we feel true in ourselves, true to express our authenticity, not in a performative manner in terms of I'm so real, but really in a brutally true manner where you are being authentic, not just to all the things that you want to signal out to the world, but also to your shadow aspects, to the various flaws and imperfections that you have. When you feel a lack of anxiety, a lack of unease about expressing that, that is when you are centered within your authentic state of being. And the sort of expressions that emerge out of you centering within this part of yourself, this position where you're like, I'm not wearing any masks, I'm not performing for anyone, I'm just naturally, very naturally just being. Those expressions are, by definition, confident. They're by definition just arising without any kind of tension within the energetic field. You know, when we feel like we're not confident, when we feel this kind of anxiety, this tension about expressing ourselves, you can very much notice that. You know, it comes as, you know, this kind of contraction of your consciousness, kind of a tightening. Like and this tightening is a very energetic thing, you know. You know it because it takes you out of flow, it takes you out of a seamless engagement with reality into a more fragmented, a more unnatural way. It feels forced. It doesn't feel like you are just being, but rather you're trying to be something else other than what you are. And when we don't feel confident in ourselves, we try to perform, we try to put on a mask. And, you know, often this will arise because we are social beings naturally. This anxiety, this lack of confidence will tend to arise in social situations where we feel as though in order to be accepted by the other, we can't truly be ourselves, but rather we have to perform a kind of a role, a kind of constructed identity, which will be accepted by the other. But of course, if we do this, if we perform a role, and that role then becomes accepted, glorified, and whatever by the other, this doesn't make us feel truly whole because it still reinforces that initial belief that who we are in our original state, in our original expression, that original expression isn't enough. So you have to filter it, you have to shrink it. And this is why, you know, you can feel lonely even when surrounded with other people who are patting you on the back and doing all sorts of social thingamabobs. You know, it doesn't resolve that inner wholeness. But if you can understand that contraction, that tightening that happens when you are inhibiting your expression, you can then come into more contact with your original self. You can come into contact with who you are prior to all the masks that you put on, prior to all the performances. You can come into contact with really that raw expression of yourself. And that raw expression of yourself, it may not be an expression that is accepted by society, by the other, by other people. It may polarize other people because many people, especially those who are themselves contracted and performing a kind of mask, they will sense your authenticity. They will sense your just lack of fear about expressing yourself. And that will point them to their own fear. And they may criticize you as a result. They may want to put you down, kind of, you know, try and sort of return you to that mask kind of state because that makes them more comfortable. But if you have true confidence, like an unwavering and unmovable kind of confidence, that is independent of anything that anyone else may say. It's something that you know deep internally into the core of your being. Any kind of nattering, any kind of criticism that will come to you, it just doesn't do anything. It just blows past you and you remain sort of immovable. When you can sort of cultivate that confidence, because it is a very doable thing. And yes, it may take time to cultivate, but many people, I'm not the only person who has talked about this sort of thing. Many people throughout all of history understand this idea of authentic being, authentic expression, and you do as well. We all do. We all are familiar with when we are in a natural state of flow and a natural state of expression, which is totally devoid of fear. We know what that is like, but we also know what it's like to be contracted into a fearful and anxious state where we feel like our expression is inhibited. And if we know what both of those are like, you can know within this moment what you're doing, whatever you're saying. You know whether that is a inhibited expression or whether it is just a raw, open, authentic expression. And you can, over time, and even right now in the moment, move your attention, move your awareness to those authentic expressions so that you're not masking. And you'll find that as you cultivate that ability to center your consciousness in a position of authenticity, you'll find that it's like a domino, and many better things will start to arise. You may experience changes to your social circles, to your life circumstance as you start to center yourself within this position of authenticity. But you'll find that all the new social connections, all the new circumstances that arises are going to be much more in alignment with who you are by definition, because you are being who you are. And whilst that change can be intense, it is ultimately good. It's ultimately purifying, because you're no longer living in a contradiction. To inhibit our expression, to inhibit our authenticity, is to live in contradiction. And this contradiction creates dissonance within the psyche. It creates a disconnect. It creates depression and anxiety, because we are not in alignment with who we are, really. And I think this is something that is so important. Many people think they need to have a drink or take whatever thing in order to tap into who they are prior to all the inhibitions. But you don't need that. All you need to do really is to remember, is to forget all the filters, all the limiting beliefs, all the limiting conceptual beliefs that keep you tethered and attached and restricted. And when you do liberate yourself from those restrictions, you find this immovable and unwavering place where you feel truly powerful, truly tapped into the sort of the source energy, where you're like, yes, this is me. Maybe, I guess that's how I articulate it. It's like a saying. It's a profound yes, and a profound silence as well that precedes the expression. There's no premeditation. There's no thinking your way into it. It's just a raw doing, a raw being, and a raw expression. There's no book you can read to learn this. You can't learn this by listening to podcasts, by listening to someone else. You have to remember yourself, really, to remember that childlike state, that inner child who would play with freedom and no sense of fear, no sense of conditioned fear from society. Rather, they're playing for the sake of playing, for the joy of it. And I guess that's what we call inner child healing. And children, before they are conditioned into fear and anxiety, they do play. They have that joy at life. And as we grow up, many of us become so disconnected from it. But it never disappears. All you have to do is remember. And remember that the childlike state, the confidence that comes from a childlike state, is one of blissful play and blissful exploration and curiosity. And you need to cultivate all of those states of playfulness, curiosity, and the sense of the joy in the exploration. This is something that is so fervently conditioned out of us by our society, because we do not live in a society that encourages these things. We live in a society that conditions us into a state of fear, anxiety, and separation. So therefore, we have to reject that society and return to ourselves, really. Be just independent of all the noisy, chaotic natterings of the world, and to return really to the source, which is you, a conscious entity looking out onto the world. And what do you see? You know, what do you see? I think I'll leave that there. Enjoy the rest of your day. Like and subscribe and blah, YouTube shit. Okay, I need to do an actual outro sometimes because I just